All right. Hello, everybody. This is pretty awesome. What a great deal. It's one of the greatest judicial systems ever invented by mankind has been corrupted. It's been turned around from law and order to political achievement, and the Democrats have achieved a lot. Silencing voices, silencing students on campuses, putting people in prison because they believed in their values of not cooperating until an issue was resolved in the courts. It's become widespread. We call it lawfare. Lawfare is the misuse of our judicial and legal system for political gain, for political advantage. It is widespread. It hasn't just infected Washington. It's down in every community in America. And today, we're going to have an honest conversation about it with three men who know an awful lot about it. One of them experienced it firsthand. You all know Peter Navarro, former assistant to President Trump. Tremendous work he does. Those of you who listen to my podcast know the man next to me, Bobby Charles, former Assistant Secretary of State and national spokesman for AMAC, one of my great friends. And I'm delighted to meet for the very first time Paul Ingrassia. Paul's doing some of the best work defending the Constitution. We got to all do that a lot more. Peter, I think some of those people might be standing for you. What do you think? I think they are. There you go, see? Those people are standing for you. I just want to let you know.
Well, sit on down and relax and listen to John. Hey, wait a minute. You got to give a hand to Joey Box, though, man. This guy who makes this all possible.
It's an amazing.
Please.
Yes. Joe, where are you, Joe?
Amazing man.
He's somewhere out there
Never
with the flag,
seen anything quite like this.
Yeah.
I think we need to have the West Wing designed by Joey Box.
Wouldn't that be
Let's
great?
get Trump back in there. Yeah. Joey Box comes in and make it look like this.
I told Peter we need one of these in D.C., and he said there's no chance zoning would ever let it in, and he's right. Communists wouldn't let it in. All right, we're going to get started with a really serious conversation because the lawfare issue is really an existential issue for this country. If we don't return to a true neutral law and order system where the face of the person, the political ideology of the person is not seen, then we're in big trouble. We will not be the extraordinary country that we've been the last 247 years. Peter, I want to start with you. You just got out of 4 months of prison. I know you know that painfully well. There are two attorneys generals who did exactly what you did. They objected to cooperating with an investigation. Neither of them were in prison. Neither of them were ever charged. They got a pass, Eric Holder and Merrick Garland. How troublesome is it that there isn't an equal system, even when it comes to something as simple as defying Congress?
Well, John, let's start with a couple of famous quotes, okay?
Please.
There's the General Clausewitz. War is politics by other means. War is politics by other means. In this case, lawfare is politics by other means. The second quote is 5,000 years old from Sun Tzu, from The Art of War. In the supreme goal of war is to win without firing a shot. And in this case, the application is to win without any ballots even cast at the ballot box. Okay? Now, the context for those two quotes is Donald Trump, perceived as possibly the 47th president back in 2021. And so a phony witch hunt J6 committee gets formed for only one purpose. It was not to get to the bottom of what happened. If they got to the bottom of that, they'd find Nancy Pelosi and the FBI responsible, not Donald Trump. And the whole purpose of that committee was to build a criminal case against Donald Trump and try to use people like me to help them in that investigation, to basically use the power of government to bring you to your knees and thereby surrender to their will and somehow become a Cassidy Hutchinson, if you know who that is. And that's what they do. And I think the important answer to your question, to really understand just how vile this is, and it was the theme of my speech at the RNC, the Republican National Committee, is it took all three branches of government, John. to put me in prison. And the reason why Merrick Garland and Eric Holder were not indicted and prosecuted for the crime is because they controlled the branches of government that matter. Okay? In this case, the Republican Congress voted to hold them in contempt. That was a charge against me. But the White House, executive branch, was controlled by them, so they're not going to do anything. So the point is, this is the action canon of Steve Bannon, is every one of you in this room, the only thing I would ask you to do between now and Election Day, when you're not having fun or feeding your family or working, is to do something that's going to win not just the presidency, but also the House of Representatives and the Senate. New York State is going to be really important in terms of controlling the House of Representatives. And to control the Senate is also to begin to control the judiciary, because it's the Senate that appoints the judges, that confirms the judges that are appointed. So this is what we're in. In the Lawfare panel, this gentleman's doing great work on the legal front. I really appreciate this organization for hosting forums like this. And this is the state of play, John.
Yeah, really well said. Really well said. Paul, I want to talk about a lawfare that I don't think a lot of people know about, but it is becoming real and it's becoming drastic. In the last 2 days, I've just met 2 lawyers, accomplished lawyers, brought some of the biggest cases in the history of this country, who are being squeezed out of their law firm because they were conservative, and they've been told they're too conservative for the law firm. We've seen lawyers being disbarred because they tried to represent clients around Donald Trump. If we can't allow people to have the legal defense of their choice, have we wrecked the system? Paul.
Absolutely. I mean, those who are the most outspoken are the ones who become targets. Like the gentleman right next to me, Peter Navarro, you know, he was someone, I remember I was in the National Economic Council as an intern in 2018, and I remember how much of a firebrand Peter was in there, and how, you know, he'd like to ruffle feathers, but he was the one who spearheaded, obviously, the tariffs against China, correcting that imbalance and making sure that we're right on the right track, and making sure that, you know, that we're not being ripped off by the Chinese, which we have been for the past 30 years by both party establishments. So it's those who stick out their heads, like him, like Rudy Giuliani, who will be, you know, potentially here later today. I mean, those are the ones who are most targeted by the lawfare, and it's because they speak the truth. It's because they speak truth to power, which is really what it is. President Trump, of course, is, you know, he's dubbed J6 defendant number 1, and what we're on the precipice of in this country is basically a wholesale communist revolution. We're on the verge of losing our freedom, and that's truly what is on the ballot this November 5th. We have basically a diametric choice between freedom and potentially reviving our Constitution and our liberties and due process of law and free speech and the right to assemble and the right to worship freely, or we're going to go down a much different, darker road where Kamala Harris is going to usher in basically a uni-party type system. They want full power on all 3 branches of government, as Peter said. They will weaponize our justice system. I believe if she gets in there, you know, this is just a test run under Joe Biden. I think it's going to be far, far worse if, God forbid, she were able to get herself into the Oval Office, because really what they want to do is silence any sort of dissident voice, any sort of dissent to the regime. If you hold a contrary opinion to what is the, you know, obviously approved agenda by the elites, the ones who are currently in charge of our government, they want to silence you. And it goes not just to Donald Trump. Obviously, you know, he always says it's not me who they're after, it's you. I'm just the one standing in the way. But they've already waged lawfare against not only the January 6th defendants, but, you know, people who attend traditional Latin Mass, parents who stand up to school boards who are promoting woke curricula on woke agendas on their children. So we've already seen sort of this lawfare and this weaponized justice come to head, reach a very bad place over the past 4 years, and I expect that to only continue further if Joe Biden or if Kamala Harris, who basically is Joe Biden, were to get into the White House. So we're in a very difficult position right now as a country. We need to get out the vote. We need to drive out voters this election cycle, and we need to make sure that we have both houses of Congress in Republican hands to give President Trump, God willing, a strong agenda to hit the ground running come November 5th.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. Momentum will matter. Bobby, you have a very unique distinction. You have served in all three branches of this government. You were a clerk on an appellate court. You served in the Assistant Secretary of State Department, and you served as chief investigator on the House Oversight Committee, one of the most prestigious investigative jobs in Congress. I want to ask you something, because a lot of us look at us and we look inward all the time and we see our country crumbling and we feel bad about it, but there's an entire world looking at us. You used to stand face to face with world leaders every day who saw us, as Ronald Reagan said, as the shining beacon on a hill, and they're worried that if we go down, they go down, that everything we stood for is what their countries were built upon. How does the world currently look at this lawfare and this lawlessness in the United States?
Well, to be blunt, John, I think they're terrified of it. Let me just say a couple of quick things here first, and I'm responding as well to being up here with some great people. This room right here is the heartbeat of America. I was just in Washington, D.C. at the RNC. I live in Maine. I come and go. I tell people, even if you were not all in this room, I would tell those people, you are the heartbeat of this country. And let me just drill down on your question, John, but the bigger issue. The stakes could not be higher. And this is what you've got to let people know. Everybody knows the quote, right? All it takes for evil to prevail is what? For good people to do nothing. That's Edmund Burke, first conservative. Bottom line is we're in deep trouble right now. Why? Because, okay, I'll borrow, you remember John F. Kennedy went to Berlin when Berlin was under assault from the Soviets, and he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," right? Well, here it is right now. We are all Peter Navarro right now. So here's the nutshell version, and it's what you got to take back to the communities. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to believe it. They grew up in a world in which, honestly, if Truman or JFK were alive today, they'd be diehard Trump Republicans. So that's the truth. They would be in shock as to where their party has gone. The stakes are enormous. Having been in the former Soviet Union, having spent time in the Warsaw Bloc years ago, I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of Europe, there's a lot of the free world that look at what's going on right now and they think, oh my God, I mean, if America slides away, we're all gone. But the bottom line is we could easily be crushed. The First Amendment goes away. Look, the Bolshevik Revolution took how long? 10 months. 10 months from they had a certain degree of freedom to they got no freedom at all. So, the bottom line here is, and I'll just put it out there, as a former, clerk on the U.S. Court of Appeals, as a former attorney who's worked in different branches of government, I personally think the election interference we've encountered recently, we need to prosecute those people. They have violated the Constitution. They have violated the statutes. They are criminals. And so bottom line today is we've got to win this election. There is just no way beyond it. So bring your 10 best friends and make them bring their 10 best friends.
Yeah, good advice. And you're right, everybody in this room actually has an opportunity to make that difference. This is about ground game in the last 55 days of this election. A decade ago, when I was the editor of the Washington Times, I got a chance to interview Václav Havel. He had been a political prisoner in the Soviet Union, later became a leader in a free Czech Republic. And he said to me, it was profound, we were over lunch, and he said, "John, you will know that your constitutional republic is under assault when the war begins on truth. The second they begin to deny truth in America, the rest will begin to crumble." We are in a war on truth. We have been told that a man elected by the American people was a Russian stooge in a Russian plant, and there was not a single iota of evidence that that was true. and the Biden Justice Department released the report that confirmed there wasn't a single evidence or iota of evidence. We were told the laptop was Russian disinformation when it was real. We're told men are now women and women are now men and they can go in each other's bathrooms. Basic truths in America are under assault. The media is, and I'm a member of the media, so I have to own my profession. Peter, how dangerous is it that we don't have truth in so many of the debates we have today?
It's everything, John. It really is everything. If you look at the polling, thank God, 65, 70, 80% of America doesn't believe what they read anymore in the media. That's a start. But then the question is, where do you turn? And Real America's Voice, Newsmax, OAN, you see John Solomon, you watch him. On the print side, there's Breitbart, there's Gateway Pundit. There's places you can go. And what we need to do, frankly, is build up a whole ecosystem where you consume not just your media, but also your goods when you go shopping. Because the way it works now is Big Pharma primarily is the biggest funder of the media, and from the media not wanting to bite the big pharma hand that feeds them, we get everything from that. But I just want to, because this is a boot camp, I just want to flesh out a little bit more on this lawfare theme, because if you understand the strategy, then you understand what they're trying to do. So when they come at Trump, or when they come at Rudy, who you'll see later, or they come at me, the first thing they want to do is put us in prison and take us off the table. That's like the first best. But the next thing they want to do is take away our money, to bankrupt us, or in Trump's case, what they're trying to do there is, I mean, look at how much money he spent. Over $1 billion in, think of that, over $1 billion that on fines and lawyers and this and that and the other thing. And we call this an opportunity cost in economics. It's like, what else could he be using that money for? Well, it would be the campaign, right? So to the extent that they can force him to spend money over here on legal stuff, he's not doing it on the campaign. And by the way, when he's spending literally hundreds of hours in court or thinking about the issue, where they distract him from thinking about strategy or being out on the campaign. And then when they convict him of a phony charge and then they can call him a felon, then from a branding, marketing point of view, Kamala Harris can get up there and say, I'm a prosecutor, you're a felon, right? That's the game. That's a big game, folks. That's Pakistan. That's a banana republic. That's communist China. That's not what this place is supposed to be. That's why you should be outraged. That's why you need to get actively involved. And when we come from folks like me and Rudy, they're just trying to do two things. They're trying to take us off the table as advisors, and they're trying to scare anybody who might want to serve in a Trump administration. That's what this lawfare is about. This panel's about that. And what we need to do, and it's not retribution, it's not the R word, it's the A word, accountability. There's certain people who need to be accountable. Merrick Garland needs to be held accountable. Jack Smith needs to be held accountable. Alvin Bragg needs to be held accountable. Juan Marchand needs to be held accountable. Fonnie Willis needs to be held accountable. These are the people who have committed the crime. If you understand lawfare, what is it? At its root, what is it? It's election interference. It is election interference. They asked Trump, it's like, well, are you going to respect the vote when it happens if there's no cheating? It's like, hey, there's been 3.5 years of cheating with your weaponized justice system. The hell is that all about? So we used to say they can come for me, they can come for you, and the only person standing between them is Trump, okay? But it's different now because they're coming for Trump. If he loses, he's going to prison, okay? The only people standing between you and him being a victim of weaponization and taking him away from you is you. So that's why you got to, when you go out this door, this is fun, this is good stuff, it's educational as well. It's all good. But when you go out there, you need to be just absolutely on task, on mission. Action, action, action. Find a way to make a difference.
Yeah, really well said. Really well said. When you were talking, Peter, I saw a document a few years ago. It was in one of the ancillary groups to the Open Society Foundation's groups, and it had 3 objectives for winning political warfare. The first was drain one's credibility, then drain one's finances, and ultimately drain one's ability to defend themselves. And I think that you just summed that up so brilliantly in what you looked at. Paul, every time someone gets engaged in lawfare, it's not a 5-figure investment. It's going to be 6 or 7 figures or higher. I had just a little tiny run-in on Ukraine where I had to fight the Justice Department for my reporting notes, and it was $250,000 in 2 weeks. How do we solve? Are there any unique ideas in the court system to help average people who might otherwise give up in the fight because they can't afford it to potentially win a fight when they're unjustly accused?
It's difficult. We need to build up, as Peter alluded to before, not just a coalition, a broader, movement in terms of media, but also in terms of lawyers and professionals who are willing to fundraise and to put the money where their mouth is, and really make sure we're putting into power, into office, people who are able to or bold enough to use power effectively. A big difference between the left and our side, and we're kind of coming around to this, but it's been too slow in my opinion, is that they are very effective and very shrewd at using political power. When they're in a position of power, they will go after their political opponents. When we have power, we tend to sit on our hands. We tend to be very forgiving of our political opponents. You don't see any articles of impeachment being filed right now against Merrick Garland. And even though, we could get the ball rolling a little bit, we don't have control of both houses of Congress, but we have control of the House of Representatives. Where is that? We have Joe Biden still technically leading this country. I mean, do we actually have a president right now? I mean, we're in a situation where we're basically a ship without a captain. The guy is on the beach, totally checked out. And you have Kamala Harris, I don't know where she is. She's being propped up by her handlers on ABC and wherever else she might be. But we don't have a government right now. We don't have people in charge. Or at the bare minimum, the people who claim to be in charge aren't the ones pulling the strings, which is a very scary prospect. Maybe Nancy Pelosi, but I'm sure there are a few other people as well in charge right now. So, you have Obama, the Clintons, Soros, but an example of this, the use of power. You have a district attorney here in New York State, in terms of Alvin Bragg and also Letitia James, who are doubling and tripling down on their prosecution against President Trump. Meanwhile, the homelessness crisis in New York City, I live in Manhattan, is through the roof. Even in so-called nice areas now, you have homeless people on the streets everywhere. You have illegal aliens, urinating in Central Park. They're all over the place. They've overtaken our subways, but all the resources and all the attention is being focused right now on Donald Trump by our Democratic politicians and DAs and prosecutors, because they understand the game of power much better than our side does. We don't have a district attorney in Kentucky or in Florida or in Texas really stepping out to do something against, for example, Joe Biden or the Clintons or the other side. If we were a little bit stronger in that direction, they would be far less aggressive in terms of their own lawfare, because they'd realize that they can't get away with pushing the envelope as far as they have now. I think, you know, we on this panel, and we are in a very dire situation right now as a country, but I think the situation could easily, or maybe not easily, but it could definitely be tempered down quite a bit if we had more stronger voices in our government, Republican voices, both in terms of Congress people, lawmakers of that sort, but also DAs and prosecutors, state DAs as well, to wage counter lawfare against the other side in order to hold the left in check. Otherwise, we're going to go quickly down the road of a banana republic. You talk to so many people from, you know, former, you know, socialist or communist countries like Venezuela or Cuba or Eastern Europe under, you know, the Soviet era, and they see exactly what they fled from right now happening in the United States of America. They see a communist system unfolding in real time, and in certain cases it's actually worse because, you know, you have all the degeneracy being pushed on us by the left to demoralize us, whether it's, you know, the gender reassignment surgery that they're trying to assign to school children and strip away parental rights, or whatever it might be. You know, they are really entering hyperdrive in terms of their agenda that they force upon the American people. So we really need to stand up and push back and be stronger about that. And in terms of accountability and holding our own leaders accountable, as citizens, we could do our part to call out our Congress people. You know, just here on Long Island, someone like Andrew Garbarino and Nick Lalotta, just call them up, tell them what you want from them, and if they're not living up to where they should be in terms of what, you know, what they promised to the American people, you have a right to speak your voice out and let them know, and book a meeting with them or call them up and send a letter or do something, at least to make sure that your word is heard and that they realize where you stand and where their constituents stand in terms of the issues. So that's one example of how, just in terms of a citizen involvement level, that you could get the voice out.
Yeah, really good advice. Bobby, I think President Trump has done a good job of identifying a three-headed monster in lawfare. You've got the deep state, the permanent administrative state, and all three branches of government. You've got big tech and big media, and then you got news media, and they've concocted a lot of these false stories, and they've furthered these narratives, and those narratives turned into action. I actually fear there's a fourth head to this monster, and it's our enemies abroad. You see recently reports that Iran was funding a lot of the protests on these college campuses that were spewing this era's Nazism, this anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hate. We know that China was trying to buy the textbooks in Oklahoma to get rid of the word communist in front of China. It seems to me that those of our biggest enemies are behind the scenes and a fourth compliciter in this effort to tip America over.
Yeah, so I'll just make 2 points there. One, for 10 years I was an intelligence officer, and I will tell you there's no question, absolutely no question, that the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese in particular, and a number of other countries are aiding and abetting those who would take down this democracy, this republic. The second is, and we haven't really said this, but I'm just going to say it strategically, building on what both of the other panelists have said, we're really looking at the attempt to normalize the abnormal in order to consolidate power and create a one-party state. So what that really means is that they're not just prosecuting Peter and Trump and a bunch of lawyers who they're trying to chill so that lawyers won't step up to defend the truth. They're actually looking to send a signal to all of the thousands of assistant prosecutors and prosecutors nationwide at the county, state, and federal level that it's open season on anyone who asserts free speech rights on behalf of truth, justice, and the American way. That's what they're trying to do. And so I think we have to keep in mind, this isn't just one election, this isn't just one candidate, this is literally, when Trump says it, he's right, he's absolutely right. This is the future of the country. We either win this time, or there won't be a lot to defend.
That's a great point. Well said. All right, there's a mic right here. We'll try to take a couple of your questions. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we stay on time. But there's a mic there. If anyone wants to come ask a question, we'll turn to you in a second. I want to go right down this line with the big question. I think Peter laid out the numero uno solution, which is the election is the only front right now that needs to be won. But let's assume that Republicans gain control of 2 or 3 of the chambers or power centers in Washington. What's the next most important thing that needs to happen to start to reverse all of the decline and all of the loss of law and order in this country? We'll start with you, Bobby.
Yeah, accountability, accountability, accountability. If we can hold the House, the Senate, and get the administration, so you have an attorney general who's a hard-hitting, sort of, don't be dissuaded kind of attorney general. End game, you bring these people to justice, you do it in a fair, efficient way, and you renormalize the normal. Get back to not chasing parents with counterterrorism laws. I mean, it's just absurd. So I think you have to work accountability to the nines.
Very important. And we don't have a Congress right now that's leveraged very much accountability. When I go up and I see these members and these chairmen and these leaders, they ought to have a little Hester print A, because they were given the ability to create accountability and none of them have delivered it. They ought to wear an A until they get their job done. Let's go to you, Peter. What's next if we win the election?
It's on.
Let's take a little inspiration from His Honor, Rudy. I don't know if you remember this, but the whole secret of Rudy, when he came into as the New York City mayor, the New York City pretty much looked like this country does right now. There were a lot of broken windows, metaphorically, if you know what I'm saying here. Okay, and Rudy's whole thing was this broken window theory. If you have a building and a window breaks and you don't fix it, that encourages people to break more windows. And so the problem we have in our legal system is that there's this revolving door. People can be arrested and be out on the street and get arrested, things like that. There's no accountability. Look, the way this happens at the federal level is you start with fixing 2 things, John.
Yep.
You fix the economy, and in order to fix the economy, you fix the border. Now, what do you do when you fix the economy? If you bring prosperity to people, there's a correlation, as we say in economics, between prosperity and the rate of crime, and it's inverse. In other words, when people have jobs and their wages are going up and life's good, there's less crime going on. And in order to make that happen, there's no way you can have prosperity in this country when you open the border and have 10 million people come in and flood our job markets and let me be any children here? No. But rape our women and kill us. Okay? That's chaos personified. So fix the economy. In order to do that, fix the border, and then secure us internationally by dealing with the Middle East, Ukraine, and communist China beaten up now on Taiwan and the Philippines.
Yeah, good playbook there. Paul, real quickly, we want to get that because I want to get a couple questions in. Your best prescription, what do you got?
Well, my answer is pretty much what these 2 distinguished gentlemen said. We need to obviously close the border. That's number 1. And President Trump always says this on the campaign trail. Day 1, he needs to close that southern border. And we need mass deportations in this country. But as far as, specifically on the question of the weaponized system of justice, we really need a very strong attorney general in there to clean up the Justice Department. I mean, of all the cabinet positions in this next Trump administration, that attorney general is going to be so key. We cannot afford another Bill Barr type in there. And the same goes also for the FBI director and the CIA, but especially that Justice Department, because I'm sure if whoever President Trump picks, and I'm sure it'll be a very strong warrior, given what we've learned over the past 6 years now of what weakness does if you don't get the right person for the job. We need to clean up that Justice Department, and I think that will go a long way towards restoring law and order and constitutional government here in this country.
That's great. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. We're going to stay on time. Let's take a couple questions from the mic there. Tell us who you are, direct your question, who you want it for.
Hi there, my name is Deborah, and I'm from Iowa. And I would like to know what the reason was for Putin endorsing Kamala.
All right, Bob, you take that one. Yeah.
You're
the AMAC guy. You get it.
game theory, you
Hang on, you just violated one rule. Remember I told you, never address her only by her first name. Okay?
That's right.
Going forth, she's Harris, Kamala, but we can't give her that kind of respect. Sorry, go ahead.
That's the new Peter rule.
That's important.
Peter principle. The
That's
Peter principle.
important.
I personally think that Putin is afraid, frankly, of Trump. I think Xi is afraid of Trump. I think Iran is afraid of Trump, and I don't think they're afraid of anyone else. And I think they know the difference between a strong-minded deterrent president who says, we are going to have a strong military, and if we fight, we will win, and we will deter you, the way Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan and other great presidents have. Or you can have an appeasement administration, which is what this one is all about, and they would love to have another one.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I had a Hungarian leader in my office on Wednesday, and he said, we know what peace through strength was. That's why the Soviet wall fell. And we now know what peace through appeasement is. It's actually lawlessness and chaos in the world. Very powerful words from someone that lives in that shadow. Sir, let's hear your question. What do you have?
Hi, name is Frank Percoco. I got a question with respect to why the RNC and the Trump campaign has done nothing to stop ballots from going out to non-residential addresses and commercial buildings, instead of just focusing completely on trying to clean up the voter rolls.
That's a good question. Anyone?
The only thing I'll say is I don't have any direct ties to the RNC. I can't tell you what they're doing, but I will tell you that a lot of this prerogative lies at the state level. And I come from the state of Maine. You remember that that Secretary of State? What a jerk, right? I mean, they are determined. You see Republican secretaries of state cleaning up the ballots and eliminating the dead and undeserving and illegal aliens on the rolls. You do not see that happening in Democrat states or purple states. Mine's a 50-50, and that's a problem. So I don't have an answer to the question, really.
Frank, I think there's actually a lawsuit that's being contemplated in Wisconsin by one of the nonprofit groups that's going to aim right at that. All right, there are people where ballots are being mailed to addresses where clearly there are no one living. It can't possibly be a residential address. There is a lawsuit. It's supposed to come out in about 10 days. We'll get it up on Just the News and Real America's Voice the second it goes. But there's some people thinking it's not the normal people, but we'll take anyone who wants to chip in and do the fight. That's what we need. Sir, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Warren. I'm here directly from God. I'd like to make that clear first. This is for all of you, maybe Peter in particular, because you spent time right inside the submarine. Recently, I saw a man named Gregory Stenstrom on with Joe Altman and Dave Clements over on Frank's Speech. And he was talking about who is really in power right now and what we're going to have to do to take these people down. You got 8 billion people on the planet, and you got a handful of people creating a lot of damage. He said it's not who you think it is. It's not Soros and Bill Gates, all these, Elon Musk. They've got money. That's their power, but you can take that away. You can put them in jail. You can do different things. He said there's a group called the Council that has been in this deep state for quite some time. Names you know, names you don't know. He put 20 people up on the board. I knew about 5, Bill Barr, Lisa Monaco, Garland, stuff like that. Some of the others, I had never seen the names before. I even bring up Amy Pope over at the UN, dragging all these people in here. I never see her name brought up. What are your thoughts on that? This council, these people, who we really have to go after to put an end to this? He said their power comes from 2 things, police and military. They don't need money. They're in there deep, and they can move these things.
Want to take the first crack, Peter?
Look, let me go back to one of the things my buddy here said that I think gives you a more practical view of how this works in D.C. It's like when I finally decided to get a lawyer after they put me in leg irons and tried to humiliate me and my fiancée at the airport with a brutal takedown. I had resisted getting a lawyer because I wasn't going to let them bankrupt me and take my retirement money and screw them, right? But, when they put you in leg irons, okay, all right, game on, right? Game on. But what was interesting is it's very difficult to find a good lawyer. Now, why is that? Well, they call them the white shoe lawyers, right? Bill Barr, Don McGahn on our side of the fence. Sure. Democrats got them. There's no political parties in D.C. when it comes to law firms, right? There's the uniparty, right? And so what they do, first of all, is these powerful law firms don't let you defend anybody in Trump land, okay? So then that leaves you with a small handful of attorneys, right? It's like the ocean then becomes a pond. And then if John's my attorney, and he comes to him for representation, they go, no, that's a conflict, right? So they thin the herd.
They thin it right out.
That way.
Yep.
As well.
That's a good
and
point.
so the way this works is it starts with money. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It's just the big interests that want to send our jobs to China and insure cheap labor or sell us a bunch of vaccines that are going to kill us. They pay for everything. And then the lawyers and the TV stations and all of these institutions,
Yep.
the universities, they message accordingly. That's how I think it works. You don't need a grand conspiracy.
You don't.
You just follow the friggin' money.
Money can buy action. It can also buy inaction. And I think that's a very big point that you made. Gentlemen, I could spend all day talking to you guys. This is such a learned panel, such great folks. We've got a full slate ahead of us, so we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for the conversation today. Peter, thank you for the time you're spending with us today. Paul, Bobby, I'm very lucky to have all three. All right, we're going to move on to the next panel. We'll get the stage realigned, and we'll be right on course in just a minute.